It's pretty well known now that the best treatment for gender dysphoria is transition. However, recent questions about voice training, makeup, and other things has made me realize that it's not quite a straight line in terms of treatment. Thinking back to when I first started to explore new clothes, my voice, and makeup, I remember that trying these things would invoke a conflicted feeling in me. On the one hand, I felt joy at this new way of self-expression and finding new ways I could look. But on the other, there was this sinking feeling in my stomach that something didn't quite feel or look right. It was the gnaw of dysphoria. It for sure added to the reasons of why I pushed exploring my identity aside so many times, and it was only in facing that dysphoria that I was finally able to do something about it and transition. If you feel like dysphoria is getting in the way of your transition, let's face it together. Hello my darlings, and welcome to my little corner of the internet where I talk about the things that I've learned and discovered about myself as a trans woman. I've already spoken about how my experimentation actually opened me up to the realization that I was experiencing gender dysphoria. However, I think it goes a little bit further than that. Starting to realize what I wanted for myself began to create a more and more conscious gap between what I looked like and what I wanted to look like. When I went to try on new clothes, do my makeup, or listen to my voice during voice training, I now had an ideal version of what I wanted it to be like. And ultimately, when I didn't meet that perfect criteria, dysphoria hit me like a bus and made me want to give up. However, standing here today, I hope you can tell that I didn't let that paralyze me. So let's talk about how I faced that dysphoria and pushed through to actually start treating it. First, I think it was important that I knew what I was going up against. Gender dysphoria is a marked incongruence between one's expressed or experienced gender and their assigned gender. There are a few ways that this can manifest itself. The desire to get rid of or change your primary and/or secondary sex characteristics. The desire to be another gender from the one that you were assigned at birth. The desire to be treated as another gender from the one that you were assigned at birth, as well as the conviction that you have the typical feelings of another gender. You do not have to have all of these symptoms to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and you do not have to have gender dysphoria at all to be trans. Now, looking back, you can actually break down gender dysphoria into a few parts. There are the parts relating to physical characteristics, psychological aspects, as well as social aspects. It's easy to see how the process of medical transition will help treat the physical aspects of gender dysphoria, as well as some of the psychological. And then, social and legal transition will help with the rest. So, if transition is the treatment, why do I say that you may have to face it in order to transition? After beginning to accept your identity, you may start to create an idealized version of who you want to be, what you want to look like, sound like, and even what you want to act like. Possibly with a very stereotypical body of your gender and a voice to match. But reality probably is that's not what you have right at the start of your transition. So when you try on new clothes, practice makeup, or listen to your voice during voice training and don't see or hear what you'd hope for, it can cause a dysphoric response. If you're not careful, it can be very easy to focus on these unreached hopes and cause you to find more, further increasing the dysphoria that you feel. This could possibly cause a spiral of feeling that you're never going to achieve what you want, and then maybe even coming to the conclusion of believing that you'd be happier never trying at all. It's very confronting and even demoralizing, especially with something like makeup or voice training where it's a skill that you have to practice to improve at. It's a horrible feeling believing that you're not making progress, especially when you feel like without improvement your dysphoria will never go away. It's a very human reaction to avoid what causes us distress, so it's so easy to just stop voice training, stop trying on new clothes, or stop practicing makeup. It's tempting just to stay inside that bubble that you know, even when it hurts. However, to make your way to a state where you feel less dysphoria, you need to face that distress, get better at managing it, and get better at being you. So how do we face it? I think it's helpful to break it down into a few different parts. There is just some dysphoria that we can't avoid, but I believe there are ways of thinking about ourselves that can help better manage this, as well as just learning to avoid certain triggers. There is also confronting our own ideas of what a man, woman, or MB should be, ideas that are possibly based in misogyny, transphobia, or other patriarchal ideas, such as expected beauty standards or gender roles. And there's also the idea of somewhat trying to understand the difference between gender dysphoria and insecurity. So let's start off with trying to manage the thoughts we have around ourselves. I talked about self-validation and self-affirmation in the last video, and this process can also be applied here. However, I'd encourage a bit more questioning during the validation phase. This little extra questioning will help confront our ideas of what we're expected to be or should be. So let's start from the top. What caused that dysphoria? Was it lack of breasts or presence of? Shoulders too broad, hips too wide, jawline too strong, not muscular enough? Whatever it is, it's perfectly normal and valid to feel dysphoria. But why is it that you feel this way? So let's have a look at a few examples of that validation. It's normal for me to feel dysphoria over my breast size because I've been taught that big boobs are a sign of a real woman. Of course my hips give me dysphoria because I've grown up thinking that wide hips were a sign of femininity. So you can see that these statements help us validate our dysphoria as well as identify sources that we can then challenge with our self-affirmation. I am a woman, regardless of my breast size. Cis women's breasts come in all shapes and sizes, and I don't think those who have smaller breasts are any less women than those with larger ones. I am a man despite the size of my hips. Although I was taught that the ideal male body had small hips and broad shoulders, that's not the only male body type to exist. A lot of this is realizing that a lot of diverse body types exist, but we've been taught that only a few ideal ones are valid. But this is obviously not the case. Look around you when you're next in public, see that bodies come in all shapes and sizes and don't determine your gender. Obviously affirmations and attitudes can only take you so far, but they do help you in managing your dysphoria. There are other things that you can do in terms of medical transition and exercises to help change the shape of your body. After all, our bodies are an important part of our expression too. Just don't let those strict gender stereotypes make you feel any lesser than you are. You can also learn which clothes accentuate the features that you like, and you can do a similar thing with makeup and your facial features. But you may have to push through your dysphoria to learn these things. And something else that may be difficult to push through are insecurities. Everybody has insecurities, things about themselves or their bodies that they don't like. But there can be a bit of a grey zone between what is an insecurity and what is gender dysphoria. Take height for example. Is height dysphoria or an insecurity? Sure, men on average are taller than women, but that doesn't mean that all men have to be taller than all women, or all women have to be shorter than all men. Height isn't intrinsic to our gender, and I don't believe that you think that a cis woman was any less of a woman because she's tall, just as a cis man is any less of a man because he's short. So why do you maybe think that you yourself are lesser because of it? If you don't think there's any cis person of your gender out there that's the same height as you, you're wrong. Height insecurity is very common in cis and trans folk alike, because it stems from the idea that an attractive man is tall, so the attractive woman has to be shorter. The same thing goes for muscle mass, breast size, and other things. It's all based in our ideas of attractiveness. These are things that can trigger our gender dysphoria, and I don't want to take that away from you, but it's important to understand that these are things that cis people struggle with too. So don't let them get in the way of your transition. The way to combat insecurities is to focus on the things about yourself that you do like, to use social media more responsibly by unfollowing or stopping following exclusively unrealistically hot people, and just to go outside more. Your worth isn't dictated by your perceived attractiveness, and neither is the validity of your gender. Once again, look around you. Even with friends and family, not everyone is conventionally attractive or fits into that ideal beauty standard, but they can still be happy, loved, and beautiful. It's important to recognize that you are your own worst critic. You see all your features in much finer detail than anyone else, especially when you're doing things like makeup. Take a step back, see yourself at that distance that most people will see you from. Remind yourself that most sane people don't hyperanalyze every part of your body or even see it. Cis people don't think about gender that much. The fear of being clocked is valid, but most of them haven't consciously linked certain features to gender like we have. Take a deep breath and keep yourself grounded. I'm not trying to invalidate your dysphoria, it is still valid. I still experience it. Just, it's important to recognize when it's preventing you from living the fullest life that you can. It's important to take steps with HRT and surgery to treat it if that's what you decide is right for you. But you can and should keep moving whilst you wait. There's plenty of things that we can achieve if we put in the effort. It's easy to see the results of others and think that that just happened to them without them doing anything. But that's not true. They tackled their dysphoria to get that voice that you admire. They overcame insecurities to be able to wear that outfit. They went to the gym, exercised, and ate more healthily to get that body they're showing off. So don't let yourself be frozen by dysphoria, because one of the only ways of treating it is by actively combating it. Cis or trans, you have to put in the effort to be who you want to be. Yes, we may have to fight more, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. If you want to feel better about something, do something about it, and I'll be cheering you on. And coming to the end of that video, I can't help but feel it's a little similar to the last one, so I hope I'm kind of mistaken. I've kind of just been on a bit of a fix around self-confidence because I do think it's so important, especially for trans people, and it's something that I've really struggled with and still do struggle with today. But going forwards, I think I might pivot onto some different subjects. We'll see how I feel. So if you did want to see what I talk about next, feel free to subscribe and for sure leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and don't forget to comment below with any tips or tricks that you may have too. As always, if you want to hear more from me, feel free to follow me on Blue Sky or join me when I stream on Sundays at 1 PM Eastern Time. But for now, until the next time, I wish you the best. Bye!